Hello everyone, welcome to this session on deploying an end-to-end website on Azure. Today in this session, we will be seeing how we can basically deploy a finished product with some conditions on Azure, which on the contrary would not have been possible on your local system. All right, so let's go ahead and see what is the website architecture that basically we are going to follow. All right, so let's go ahead and understand the website architecture. Before that, we have some people on webinar and we also have some people who are watching this on YouTube. So people on webinar, I'll be answering your questions live. So if you have any queries, you can go ahead and put it in the question box. Okay, so let me just read out if there are any questions. All right, no questions till now. All right, guys, so let's go ahead and start. So guys, let's go ahead and first understand the website architecture. So guys, this is what we are going to try to create today. Basically, we are going to have a domain, which is basically going to be known as azure-project.tk, let's assume. And this domain should be pointed to our website, which we are going to deploy. Okay, now the catch over here is anyone who's trying to access it from the US should be able to access my US website, and anybody who is trying to access it from India, they should basically be able to see our Indian website. Okay, now this is something that we are going to architect using a lot of components on Azure. So let's see how we can go ahead and do this. So guys, this is the flow of the architecture that we are going to follow. So first of all, we will have something, one second. Yeah, so first of all, we will have something called as a domain. As you can see on the top, you will find the domain, which is www.azure-project.tk. This is the domain. This domain will basically be pointing to a traffic manager. Now, traffic manager is a resource which is basically going to identify from which region is this request coming from. Is it coming from the US region or is it coming from the Indian region? Now, based on the request, we will define some rules that it has to route traffic to a specific server, either in the Indian region or in the US region, right? My Indian region server will have its own website. My US server will have its own website. That is again something that we are going to configure, right? And anybody, so you just have to visit the link azure-project.tk, and you do not have to specify which region you're staying in, etc. Azure will automatically identify that and will basically route it to the specified virtual server. Now, this is something, guys, that we're going to go ahead and create. If you have any doubts, let me know on the question sections. I will be answering it for you. Okay, now let's go ahead, guys, and start architecting this. So first of all, what you need is a portal where you can basically work. That is the Azure portal. So in our previous session on YouTube, I already told you how to create an Azure account. Now what we're going to do is we'll just quickly go to a browser. And now we will go to our Azure website. So it's going to be portal.azure.com. So once we have reached our website, first of all, we will create a resource group. Let's call this resource group as Azure Live. Let's create one. So Azure-Live is the resource group that we are creating, and let's create it in the West US region. Let's hit on review plus create and then create again. All right, so my resource group has been created successfully, guys. I can just go ahead and go to my resource group from over here in the notification panel. And now once I've come to my resource group, the first thing that I have to deploy are two servers, that is the US server and the Indian server, right? So US server will be deployed in the US region and the Indian server will be deployed in the Indian region. So let's go ahead and do that. So first I'll click on add, and I want to add an Ubuntu server. Let's select that. On this Ubuntu server, we are going to deploy a website. So First of all, let's deploy the server. Let's name this server as US server, right? And we are basically going to deploy it in the West US region. Here it is, right? Now, the operating system that we want to run on this system is Ubuntu server. So we're gonna leave that at default. And now let's go ahead and select the processor and the memory that we want for our server. So I think a 1 GB machine with 1 vCPU should be enough. So we're gonna select that. It's gonna cost us 600 rupees a month, but I'm gonna delete it after this live. So it's gonna cost me around 0.5 or 0.6 paise, right? The username for this user, since this is a US server, let's say it is US. This is the username, and let's specify a password. Okay, this is gonna be my password. Now in the inbound, in the firewall, I'm gonna enable HTTP port as well because we want to access the website, right? And now we're gonna go ahead and click on review plus create. So this will basically deploy our US server. So as you can see, it's gonna charge me 0.8 paisa per hour, and I'm gonna delete it after 1 hour. So this is the amount of pricing that Azure gives me. So I'll just go ahead and click on create. And now my server is getting deployed. Okay, so let's wait for this page to refresh. Right, so my US server is now getting deployed. So let's give it some time. Meanwhile, let's go ahead and deploy our Indian server. So let's go back to Azure Live Resource Group, right? And now let's click on add. Again, we are going to add an Ubuntu server. Just select Ubuntu. Okay, the virtual machine name in this case would be Indian server, right? And we are going to deploy it, let's say in South India. Okay, this is going to have the Ubuntu operating system, which has been selected, which is great. The size of a machine would again be a 1 GB machine and a 1 vCPU. Let's select that. Right, so username would be India, and password would be this. Okay, now in the ports, we are going to allow HTTP port again because we want to access a website. And now let's finally click on review plus create. Okay, finally, let's click on create, and this will now deploy our website. Okay, so now my server is getting deployed. So meanwhile, if I check my US server, it should already be deployed. So yes, it's deployed. Let's try to connect to this server. So the IP address is this. Let's select it. Let's launch a terminal. Let's open it full screen. And now let's try to connect to our US server. Okay, I'm entering a wrong password, I guess. Let me try it one more time. Okay, so now I'm inside my server. First, let's update the machine. The machine is getting updated. Meanwhile, let's check if our Indian server has been deployed or not. Okay, so this is the IP address for my Indian server. Let's connect to it. So SSH India the IP address, and now the password. Okay, I'm connected, and now let's update this machine as well. Okay, meanwhile, let's come back to our US server. Let's install the web server on it. All right, so web server is getting installed, and let me do that on my Indian server as well. Okay, while this is happening, let me see if there are any questions. So SRU is saying, why was the pricing different for both servers even though the configuration is same? Is the pricing region specific? So yes, SRU, the price is region specific. So prices vary from region to region because the taxes are different for every server that you are running. Electricity charges are different, etc. Internet charges are also different. That's why the pricing also for the para basis for the server that you deploy, they are also different with respect to each and every region. Okay, so now that Apache 2 is installed on my Indian server, on US it's still being installed. So let's give it some time. Meanwhile, let me go ahead and change the default website that are there on these servers. I'm going to go ahead and write a very simple index.html file, which will have a very simple body with an h1 saying that this is the Indian server. And now let's close the HTML as well. Okay, so this is my Indian server configured. Now let's do the same on my US server as well. So I'll just remove the default index.html file first. And now I'll go ahead and edit this index.html file. And this will also have the same code, which is this. In this case, the only difference would be this time this will be, the website will say this is the US server. Okay. All right. So my website has been created. And now we can verify that by going to the IP address of the website. So this is my Indian server. If I go to the Indian IP address, I'm getting the text as this is the Indian server, right? And if I go back and go to my US server, which is this, and select the IP address over here, paste it here, you will see that this is the US server. Okay, so both our websites are now configured. Now what we have to do is we have to go ahead and configure the redirection, which is going to happen across regions. Okay, so now let me see if there are any questions. So Sitaraman is saying, is there a security threat to the port 80 that's open? No, Sitaraman. So usually when you have port 80 open, that is basically the HTTP port. right? But now there is an HTTPS port as well, which basically encrypts your website data using SSL certificates. But SSL certificates are not free. If you want to enable SSL encryption on your website, you will have to buy the SSL certificate and then you can make it available. Okay, but as such, when you talk about production architectures, port 80 is not actually open directly off the server to the internet. You have always a load balancer in between, right? Which takes care of, which takes care of the part of redirecting the request to the port 80 of the server, to which only the load balancer has access. Nobody else on the internet would have access to, right? So, but we are not going to get into much details of that architecture, the production architecture today, because this is an introductory session. I'm going to show you how you can deploy your website even though you have started on Azure today. Okay, but like I said, this is not how it is deployed on production. So Sitaraman is saying Windows Server will cost more than Ubuntu. So Ubuntu is an operating system which is open source in nature, Sitaraman, and Windows is a licensed operating system. So yes, there will be a price difference between launching an Ubuntu server and a Windows operating system. So Sitaraman is saying SSL certificate like the Komodo. Not sure about what Komodo is, Sitaraman, but SSL certificates are basically issued to us by a www governing body, right? So you have to go to the websites, purchase that certificate, and it has a certain expiry date to it through which we can buy it. Okay, all right. So guys, that was the end of the questions. Now let's go ahead and come back to our architecture. So now what we are going to do is we are basically going to, so let's first come back to our slides to see what all we have done. So we have deployed a US server and we have deployed our Indian server. Now what we need is we need a traffic manager, which can basically route a request based on where it is coming from. Okay. So let's go back to our portal and now let's search for a resource called traffic manager. Here it is. Okay, so let's create a traffic manager from here. Let's click on add. Right, let's give it some name. So let's call it Intellipaat Azure. Right, the routing method would be geographic. The resource group would be Azure-live. Let's go ahead and create it. Why have I selected geographic over here? Because now the routing which will happen to my servers will happen according to geography. And there are a lot of options that you can choose over here. Had I chosen performance, so in that case, whichever server has the least latency, that server would have got the access to my request. But in this case, we are basically going to route it according to geography. All right, let's go ahead and create. So now my traffic manager is getting deployed. Right now, when you are basically going ahead and connecting anything to the traffic manager, there is a little setting that you have to do. That is, traffic manager, when it is pointing to any public IP address, that public IP address should have a DNS name. Right now, that can be defined from inside Azure Portal as well. I will just show you in a moment. So right now, if I refresh, my traffic manager should be visible over here. It takes about a minute after getting completely deployed to show it up on your dashboard. So as you can see it over here. Let's click on it. Now in traffic manager, I will have to configure something called as endpoints. Okay, so I can go in endpoints, and in endpoints, I will have to add my virtual servers over here. So I will just show you how to do that. Meanwhile, I think I have a question, so let me take that up. Sitaraman is saying traffic manager is common for both US and Indian server. Yes, Sitaraman, it will be the same. So this is the place where the request is going to get routed from, right? This is the central place where all the requests will come, and this will get routed to the specified server based on how the request has been formed. Okay, so let's add an endpoint over here now. Let's click on add. let's name this endpoint as the Indian endpoint, right? And this would be the target resource is a public IP. So if we choose the public IP address, as you can see, the Indian server IP is listed over here, but we cannot select it. Okay, and why can't we select it? If you click on the I button over here, it says no DNS name is configured. So we will have to configure a DNS name of my IP address in order to connect my virtual servers, my traffic manager to my virtual servers. So how do we do that? Just go back to your dashboard. Let's open up it in a new tab. And now let's go to the server. So let's say we go to the Indian server first. Now the Indian server, we will have to set up a DNS name. So DNS name, how can you configure? You will have to configure it using the public IP address. So just click on the public IP address resource. Now in this resource here, you will have to specify a name, the DNS name label. Okay, so let's specify something. So let's say this is the Indian server. Okay, so this DNS name is available. Let's click on save. So the DNS setting has been implemented on our IP address. And now if I go back over here and adding endpoints, and if I click on choose a public IP address, so first we will have to close this, again click here. And now you can see the Indian server IP is selectable, right? Why? Because it has the DNS name attached to it now. So let's select it. And now we will have to do a regional grouping. Okay, so which region do I want to give my Indian server to? So I want all the countries in the Asia region to be able to connect to my Indian server. Okay, and now I can just click on OK. And this, my Indian endpoint has been added. So all the countries which are there in the Asia continent will be connecting to my Indian server. Okay. Next, what I'll be doing is I will be clicking on add again. And this time I'm going to add my US endpoint. So I'll just type in US server. Okay. And in this case also, we will have to change the configuration of our IP address. So let's go ahead and change it. In this case, we have to go to our, again, our resource group. In our resource group, which we can directly go to the IP address resource as well, right? So we can just go to US server IP. And here we can go ahead and specify the DNS name again. Okay, so let's specify US server. So this name is already taken. Let's specify one in front of it. And yes, it is available. Okay, so now let's click on save. So my configuration is getting saved now. Right, it'll take a minute or so. So yes, it has been saved. And now I can go back to my traffic manager. I can select the target resource type as public IP address. And now let's select the US server IP. And the regional grouping would be one second. So the regional grouping would be North America, right? And you can actually go ahead and select a specific country as well, but I'm gonna leave that setting and click on OK. Okay, so now my endpoint has been added. It is checking the health of it. As you can see, the Indian health, it has been checked and it is online. This will also change to online in a minute or so. So SRU has a question. They say DNS name in turn resolves to public IP address, right? Does the traffic manager not have an option to directly configure using public IP? So no, SRU, with my traffic manager, I have to specify a DNS with my IP address first, and only then it works. Okay, so now that my endpoints have been added, we can just go ahead and check our configuration, right? So this is the DNS name of my traffic manager. I can just copy it, paste it in my browser, and as you can see, it is taking me to the Indian server. So what we can do is we can just curl this on my US server. So this is the US server terminal. I can just curl this domain over here, and let's see which website it picks up. So as you can see, my server in the US region is picking up this US server HTML page. And if I compare it with my Indian server, if I do a curl of the same address on my Indian server, it is picking up the Indian server HTML page. So our region has been configured, right? So now that we have the regions configured, our domain is working on that. Now let's have a custom domain point to this particular traffic manager as is specified in our PowerPoint as well. So we want a domain like azure-project.tk to point to our servers, and we don't want something like this, Intellipaat-azure.trafficmanager.net. We don't want something like this. So how can you do that? So you will have to go to a website like Freenom to get a domain name registered to yourself. Okay. Now, domain names basically are premium in nature. You have to buy them, right? But if you, let's say, want to just practice it out to see how it basically works, you can basically make use of a website called Freenom, which provides you free domain names, but those domain names will only be valid for 3 months. Okay, so you have to be sure that you're not using it for production purposes and only for your practicing needs. All right, so once you have signed up, now what you have to do is you have to go to services, and then you have to go to my domains. Okay, now whatever domain you purchase, guys, it will or basically you check out will be available over here, right? So let's go ahead and register a domain. So I'll just go to register a new domain, and let's specify the domain over here as aws-project.tk. Let's check the availability. So TK is actually not available. It is not for free, but .ml is available for free. So let's select this, right? And let's check out the domain that we selected. Okay, so we are going to get aws-project.ml. Sorry, so I selected AWS. Sorry for that. What I need is the Azure domain. So it's going to be azure-project.tk, and it is free, right? So let's check it out. So we do not need aws-project.ml. We need azure-project.tk. Let's continue. Okay. And now, as you can see, it is not going to charge us anything. Let's agree to the terms and conditions and click on complete order. Okay, so our order has now been confirmed, guys. So now if I go to services and then my domains, I should be able to see azure-project.tk registered to myself. Now what I have to do is I have to point this domain to a service in Azure, which is basically called Azure DNS. Okay, so let's go ahead and launch Azure DNS. So it's called DNS zones. Let's click over here and let's create a DNS zone by clicking on add. So the resource script that I'm going to deploy it in would be Azure-live. Let's name it something. Let's name it Azure-DNS. Okay, so let's give it the name of as same as our domain. So Azure hyphen project dot tk. This is going to be the name for my DNS zone. Let's click on review plus create. It's very simple, guys. Just a once click process. And once the validation has been completed, you can just go ahead and click on create. Okay, so my DNS zone is now getting deployed. So I'll just have to wait for some time and it'll get deployed completely. So as you can see, the deployment is now complete. So I can just click on go to resource and you will see a page like this. Now it is very important to understand what this page is telling you. Okay, so what you see over here are name servers. Okay, so these are name servers which basically have to be entered on your freenom domain. Your freenom domain will basically be pointing to these servers, and then these servers will have the record of forwarding your request to our traffic manager. Okay, now let's see how we can configure that. So first, let's copy these name servers one by one, and on our freenom page, what we have to do is we have to click on manage domain. In manager domain, we have to click on management tools and we have to go to name servers. Now, when we go to name servers, we have to click on use custom name servers and enter our name servers over here one by one. So this is the first name server. Let's go ahead and select our second name server, which is this. So let's enter that as well. Let's select our third name server. And now let's go ahead and select our fourth name server. Remember, guys, this will also copy a dot in the end of your domain names of your name servers. So just delete the dot in every entry that you're making. Okay, now let's go ahead and click on change name servers. So with this, your freenom domain has been configured correctly. Okay, so this is now going to point to Azure. So you can just close this tab. There's no more configuration required over there. Now in our DNS zone, let's configure some more things. So now the request from my Azure-project.tk is going to come to this DNS zone. Now from this DNS zone, I want to point it to my traffic manager. So for that, I will have to add a record set. Let's click on add a record set, right? The type of record set is going to be A. You don't have to change this. The alias record set, you have to select this as yes. And now you will select Azure resource. You want to basically point it to an Azure resource. And which Azure resource? You basically want to point it to the traffic manager, which is named Intellipaat-Azure. Let's select this, right? And this will basically add your record in your traffic Azure DNS service. Okay, it says fail to create record set. The record sets of type A or must reference a traffic manager profile with endpoints containing valid IP addresses. Okay, let's check out what is the problem over here. Let's try to add it one more time. Okay, so it could be the reason that my traffic manager is having an IP address which is not valid. Let's check it out. Let's go to endpoints. So both my IP addresses are valid over here, right? Okay, everything seems to work fine over here. Let's go back to our DNS. Okay, let's try to add it. And if we again get the error, let's try to Google that error. All right. So we want to add a record set, and that record set should be pointing to my traffic manager. Right. Let's click on OK. Again, we will get that error. And now let's try to search on that error. So failed to create record set at the rate, record sets of type A. Okay, so let's search it. Record sets of type A, traffic manager, and then Azure. Okay, I think we have our answer over here. Okay, let's try a Cname record. I think that should work. So I'll just click on add a record set. And now the type would be Cname. Let's select alias record set and select the traffic manager here and click on OK. So I think this should resolve the error that we were getting. Okay, so we have added a record name. Let's try to connect to it. Azure-project.tk. And yes, we are able to connect to our server. Now let's see if we curl this IP address from my terminal of US server, what do I get? So I can see that if I'm curling the azure-project.tk URL, I can see that this is the US server. In case I am, trying to request this URL from my US instance, and if I'm trying to connect it from my Indian instance, I can see that I'm being connected to my Indian server. So with this, guys, I think we have successfully completed our website. So this was it. This was what was planned for you today. So I hope you guys have learned something new, guys. Now, if you want to further learn Azure, I have already told you to people who joined us in the evening, you can go ahead and enroll yourself in a free course by Intellipaat by going onto intellipaat.com/academy. We have a lot of free courses over here, right? You can select which course you want to learn. For example, let's say you want to learn about Azure, so you can select the Azure course, enroll yourself here for free, and learn more about this course. Now, in case you want to switch your career into Azure and learn a lot more, so obviously this free course is not the full course. For the full course, you will have to enroll into our premium courses. So those you can actually go ahead to our Intellipaat.com website, search for Azure over here in the search, and then you would see all the search Azure web, courses that we offer. Right, you can go ahead and enroll yourself in the Azure course in case you want to shift your career to Azure. Okay. Now, with this, I would like to take a leave from you all. If you want to get in touch with us, these are the numbers that are there on the website. These would help you out to reach to our course advisors who are available 24/7 to guide you based on which, based on your skill set, which career choice would be right for you. You can take all that guidance from these numbers which are available on the screen, right? And that would be it from my side today. So let me see if there are any more questions. So Dheeraj is saying, is this video available offline for review? Dheeraj, you can actually check this video out on YouTube. If you go to our channel, this video will be available over there. So you can watch it later in case you want to revise something out. Okay. So with that, guys, I would like to thank you all for joining in today. I hope you guys have learned something new. If you want to contact us, like I said, these are the numbers that you can basically call us on, and we would be happy to answer all your queries. Okay. So with that, guys, have a great day ahead and goodbye.